Axis and Allies Commanders from Renegade Game Studios has finally landed on front porches around the world. Today we're going to give you 3 ways to get them on your game table and into the fight. It's time for a deep dive into the all-new Axis and Allies Commanders. Let's make it hot. Welcome to Board Game Nation. My name is Gary Blevins. Thank you so much for watching. And a thank you to our friends at Renegade Game Studios for sponsoring this video and for sending us the very first pack-out copy from the factory. Follow the link in the description to get your copy of Commanders and check out the whole catalog of Axis and Allies games, accessories, and so much more. First, for those who might not be aware, what are these things and what are they for? Axis and Allies Commanders is an accessory pack designed to be compatible with every historical version of Axis and Allies. So that's all of them except for G.I. Joe and Battle for the Deep. This package includes 24 double-sided commander tiles with a rule book that provides the necessary rules adaptations and clarifications for the best use of the different commanders in the various A&A games. Guadalcanal changes this way, Stalingrad changes this way, and so on. Each commander tile is double-sided with a basic ability on one side and an expert on the other. Now, one important note here, expert doesn't necessarily mean more powerful. The designers use the terms basic and expert as a way to differentiate the complexity of use. Newer players might find the basic abilities more straightforward. Expert abilities might be more or less powerful than the basic ability, but they will definitely require a greater understanding of the base rules of the game. If you want to know more about the specific cards, Doug and I sat down and went through them. You can follow this link here to check out our original walkthrough. Today we're going to cover 3 ways that you can determine which commanders will be used in your casual games and in some tournaments. Now, before we go any further, the entire concept behind these tiles is that they are accessories that folks can use however they want. So what we'll be talking about today should not be construed as the according to Hoyle right way to use these. The processes that we're going to be sharing with you today are the fruit of discussions with my playgroup and the general discussion on the Board Game Nation Discord server, linked below. We haven't done any kind of in-depth playtesting on these methods. I see this as a jumping off point for the community to start experimenting. Now give these methods a try, and if it works well for you, drop a comment here or head over to our Discord server and let us know. If they don't work well for you, I guess we want to know that too. But either way, we're just offering a framework today. Take what you like, leave the rest. Before we get into our recommendations, let's talk about what the rulebook suggests. Here is the process from page 3 of the rulebook. 1. The players decide who is going to be playing which side and specifically which power each player will play. It doesn't say how to do this. Presumably, it means for you to do this however your group prefers to do it, and that's fine. 2. Each player is given all commander tiles for their power. They look them over, discuss the options and possible combinations of abilities that might work well together. 3. Each player secretly chooses one commander and which ability they'll be using, basic or expert. 4. After everyone has selected their commanders and ability, they reveal them to everyone and read the ability aloud. The method suggested in the rulebook is simple and straightforward, which I really appreciate, but here's my concern. All the commander abilities are going to have different degrees of impact on the game, and that impact is going to vary wildly depending on the version of the game. General Patton might be the best example of this. His basic ability gives attacking tanks that are in their first round of combat and have been taken as a casualty the ability to fire again before being removed from play. That's pretty cool. But when you're playing 1942 2nd Edition, Anniversary, or Global, how many US tanks do you typically have in play? Not all that many. But that ability could be huge in Battle of the Bulge, or in North Africa, or D-Day. So, over time, people are going to figure out which commanders work best in the different games. And I worry that the inevitable meta will develop, and that'll drive some of these games into a rut. That, and there are tons of cool abilities in here that might never get used because people gravitate towards the names they know. And with 48 different abilities, even just using one per power, the possible combinations in any given game is really pretty astronomical. So live a little. I should say here that the rulebook clearly states that these are not for tournament play, they are only designed for casual play. But here's how we used them in tournaments at Battlefront Dayton last year and how we plan to use them at Dayton this year. Now, obviously, we didn't want them to have any kind of impact on who was going to win or even place in a tournament. But first, you have to know that all of the Axis and Allies tournaments at Battlefront Dayton are Swiss paired, meaning that everyone that shows up is going to have the opportunity to play 3 games. And in each successive round, they'll face someone with a similar record. Winning teams play winning teams, losing teams play losing teams. Works great. Everybody has a great time. So on day 3, the only downside is that a couple of teams go into Sunday with an 0-2 record for their last game, and that can be kind of a bummer. So to spice those games up, we offered those 0-2 teams the option to use the commander cards in their final games. And now our goal was to use 1 commander per power, and here's how we decided to divvy them up. Before the game starts, in fact, before players even choose sides, we pull out all the commanders that are not applicable to the version in play and put them back in the box. Next, we lay the commander cards out by power and assign a number to each of the commanders for each power. So the US has 4 commanders. We assign them a number 1 through 4. Do the same with all the other powers. Next, roll a die to determine which commander will be used by each power. Now, obviously, a 4-sided die would be best, but if all you have is the d6, you can use that for any of these. Just work it out. So the US only has 4. You roll a d6 and you roll a 5 or a 6. You can re-roll, or you can sort it out. You're smart people. I believe in you. Once every power has been assigned a commander, move on to step 4. Roll another die for each commander to determine if the basic or expert ability will be used. On a d6, that might be 1, 2, and 3 get you a basic, 4, 5, and 6 get you expert, or you can just flip a coin. Give everyone enough time to evaluate the strength of the assigned commanders, their abilities, and their potential combinations. Then, after everyone understands those abilities and how they might affect the game, bid for sides as you would normally in a tournament. If you're not familiar with the tournament bidding process, it's pretty simple. Players bid for sides, going back and forth, offering more and more IPCs until one side accepts. These bid IPCs are spent and placed on the map prior to the start of the game. We found that this is the best way to determine sides and resolve any perceived balance issues. You can learn more about it right here. Okay, there are 3 big reasons why I really like this method. First and foremost is this. Everyone gets a chance to evaluate the board state before they choose sides, and if they think the commanders have influenced the balance of the game, they can use the bid to try to level it out. Next, the odds that any 2 games are going to be the same is roughly 17 gazillion to 1. Finally, the random nature of the assignment of the commander abilities helps to keep the game even for players who might never have used the commander cards before. I mean, if someone showed up to an Axis and Allies game with the commander cards, suggesting that everyone used them, I would love the idea that they might have spent hours studying the commanders and figuring out which ones were the best for this version, and then handing them to me and asking me to pick from the abilities that I'm not familiar with while they sit over there and smirk. Yeah, I'm talking to you, Charles. Anyway, so that's how we manage them at Battlefront Dayton. But I think this is also an interesting and reasonably quick way to get them distributed and get a casual game started. This one also came up on our Discord channel, and I really like the premise. Basically, the idea is that all of the commanders are available to the various powers throughout the game, but they can only have 1 in play at a time, and each commander is single use. Before the start of the game, players secretly choose an ability from 1 commander per power for use in round 1. At the end of round 1, the commanders that were used are retired, and the players may choose an ability from a different commander. Of course, there's a limited number of commanders, and you're almost certainly going to have more rounds than you have commanders available to you, so players can elect not to activate a commander at the start of their round, opting to save them for later days. Interesting. I like that it's probably going to use every commander card over the course of a single game, and it feels somewhat historically accurate, right? They all had their moment, but few, if any, were really dominant throughout the entire war. Now, I haven't tried this one yet, but it does sound like a lot of fun. Give it a go. Tell me what you think. Now, the third way I'm going to share with you comes at this issue in an entirely different way. I was sent down this particular rabbit hole by a comment on our Discord server. Mr. Gatling Guy asked, what if commanders could be purchased? Now, I thought that was really interesting, but I don't love the idea of players spending IPCs to develop leaders. That's not typically how leaders emerge, at least not good ones. Great leaders are almost always the ones who rise to meet the moment they're faced with. In that spirit, I've built an approach that's different than anything I've seen so far. At the start of the game, all of the appropriate commanders are given to their powers, but they are inactive. Each one may become active depending on the board state. The commanders rise if the situation demands it. In practice, this will make them work a lot like national objectives. I've created a spreadsheet linked in the description and pinned comment with all of the commanders, their abilities, and the conditions that would trigger them to rise. When they do, the controlling player chooses which ability they want to use, basic or expert. Now, I was only focused on the mainline games of Global, Anniversary, and 1942 2nd Edition, so these aren't built for any of the campaign-level games of like Stalingrad or North Africa or anything like that. But I can imagine that some creative soul out there is going to come up with some clever adaptations. These will need to be play-tested to see if they even make sense, but here are a few examples. The Germans have Field Marshal Erich von Manstein. His basic ability is called Lion of the East. During the first combat round of each of your attacks, you may re-roll up to 2 of your dice. His expert ability is Strategic Genius. When attacking or defending, for each matched set of infantry, artillery, and tank you own in the battle, each unit may only be part of 1 set per round, roll 1 additional die with an attack or defense value of 2. So he starts the game as dormant, but his abilities and the Field Marshal's history tell us that he was critical in the battles on Germany's Eastern Front. So in order for him to become active, the German player must invest time and material to meet certain conditions that would cause him to rise. In this case, the Germans must control all of its original land territories that are adjacent to the USSR. The effect is immediate and is lost if the Germans no longer meet that condition. You see where we're going with this. One more example. Konstantin Rokossovsky. His basic ability is Tactical Withdrawal. When defending in a land territory immediately before the conclude combat step of each combat round, if the battle doesn't end, you may move 1 of your infantry in the battle to an adjacent friendly territory that was not combat moved into this turn. Okay, not bad. His expert ability is a bit more impressive. Deep Strike. In each of your turns, if you win the first land battle you conduct, the surviving units may immediately combat move into an adjacent territory that has not been previously combat moved into this turn and conduct a combat that may only last 1 round. Obviously, this could create a massive steamroll. Now, it seems to me that if the Soviets are going to be doing some blitzing of their own, they should probably have a strong hold on the motherland. So, to get General Rokossovsky into action, the Soviets must control all of their original victory cities. Yeah? Make sense? Now, I freely admit that this is probably more complicated than it needs to be, and it could be challenging to keep track of this at the table. So perhaps you play with these rules, but only allow 1 commander to be in play per power at a time. Again, the spreadsheet with all the commanders and their rise conditions that I have written out of whole cloth are in the description. Have fun. Let me know how they work for you. As I said, these options are meant as a starting place to help you and your friends more easily integrate these commander cards into your next game. That's kind of what makes these great. You can do with them whatever you like. Plus, for only $20, it's kind of hard to beat them. But again, you can use the link in the description to get your copy of Commanders and support the channel at no additional cost to you. Thank you again to our friends at Renegade Game Studios for sponsoring this video. If you'd like to see Doug and I talk through almost all of those commander cards, you can follow this link right here. For more about Axis and Allies in general, here you go. For our latest bit of mayhem, right this way. And if you're ready for more from Board Game Nation, click here to subscribe. My name is Gary Blevins. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.